Welcome back, everybody. This is Rodrigo Fonador with another episode of Asheville Real Estate News. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Today we have a special guest, and just wanted to let everybody know that we are going to loosely be talking on real estate related matters, but we're also going to just be talking about Asheville, change, and just kind of some of the driving factors that have been seen by somebody who grew up here and has had the opportunity to see a lot of people develop businesses, grow businesses here in the area. So really excited about our guest today. Real quickly, though, as a reminder, all of our episodes here are brought to you all by American IRA, your local self-directed IRA custodian here located in Asheville. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Oby Morgan.
Hey.
What's going on, man?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me just well? Is this like pull it up a little bit? Okay, I just want to make sure this is an audio thing. I mean, I've got to make sure I sound good. I'll try not to turn my head a bunch.
You can keep it nice and close, and we'll be good to go.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. Oby, if somebody is not familiar with who you are, and they should be, but let's start with a basic introduction of who you are, what you do, and how you ended up doing what you do now.
Sure. So I'm the founder and publisher of the local business publication for Western North Carolina called Capital at Play, and I launched it in September of 2011, so we're coming up on our 9th year. And how I got into it is a whole different question. I mean, I don't really know how you end up exactly where you are. I mean, I can say for sure that it's less than 1% of the people we've spoken with and the people we've profiled in the magazine over 9 years that are actually doing something that they set out to go do from the start. So, I probably would say I do this for lack of a better purpose because I thought it'd be fun, and if it didn't work out, I might meet a bunch of interesting business owners, and one of them might have given me a job. I was still in college, so if you launch something at that early stage, you figure if it doesn't work, I'm still at the same place I am now, which is broke.
You have very little to lose, right?
Exactly. It's really,
totally get that.
You have to have money to have risk. So when you have none, there's really no risk.
Yeah, if you've got nothing to lose, you're definitely a little bit bolder typically, right?
Yeah, I think so. Or, and I would suggest anybody that's, well, the younger you are, the sooner you should get into it, right? People will give you a leap of, people will give you a benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah.
So that's the right place to take that leap of faith, I think.
There is something to be said about being the young kid on the block in any industry. There's a little bit more margin for error, I think.
Yeah, people let it slide a little bit. I mean, I wouldn't say that we've been error-free over the years, but we certainly feel more duty-bound to have less errors now than we did 9 years ago. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So what happened at 2011? Well, what were you doing at that point? I mean, you said you were in college or just out of college. And what happened for you to be like, I'm doing this? Where did the idea come from? How did this all happen?
So I was in school at Appalachian State, and I was actually driving back and forth to Asheville on a monthly basis taking flying lessons, and my collegiate career took a circuitous route as well. I originally had gone to Ole Miss, thought I was going to be an attorney, and then started taking business classes, and let's suffice to say, after sweating too much down there, I realized I missed the mountains a lot and transferred to Appalachian State, ended up doing eco-hydrology research and got some grants from the state of North Carolina, and I was doing that while I was taking business classes. And I always have a hard time deciding what I want to keep learning about. I like to learn about a lot of things, and the more sophisticated term is autodidact, which someone told me years later. But
autodidact?
Yeah, it means you like to teach yourself things, right? You're autodidactic, apparently, which is just a great word to drop and make you seem just,
I'm impressed.
Snobby or something. But yeah, so I like to learn a lot, and I was probably the only jerk in my strategy class in business that liked reading case studies. And it took me some time to realize why I liked them, but I liked them, I think, because I could see context in them. And I was fortunate enough to grow up with friends, parents, and my parents' friends that were in some level of management or ownership in business or in small business. And you grow up around the dinner table hearing them talk about the kind of problems that they would be working through, because it doesn't really end when you check out at the end of the day.
Never
if it's
ends.
what you do.
Yeah.
And when you're reading about something in a case study, you can picture these people struggling and working through these problems and picturing the nuances. And, the more detailed the case study, the more interesting it was to me, because that granular level is really where the exciting stuff happens. And I also, at the same time, was learning some photography from a friend I was working with, and I always liked design and art. And as you can see, I can't. It's like I don't have a box that I want to be in, but I
make the box bigger and keep putting more things in it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think I had some idea that there were a lot of really coffee table friendly magazines around Western North Carolina, and none of them were really anything that I wanted to read. And having grown up here, my snarky opinion at 20 or 21 was like, well, I'm just tired of seeing that same stock photo of like Looking Glass Falls and a little piece that like I can go walk on that trail. Like that's like, we did that in Boy Scouts. Like I've known about that for a decade. That's not going to get me to pick it up and read it. And same thing on the business front. There's, maybe the same 20 businesses that have the bandwidth and are interesting enough to be talked to and about. And there's just so much more that goes on around here. And, you compare that with the perception, I think, that used to be the prevailing perception that we're a tourist economy, and I know that's not the case. And I just saw a lot of opportunity for content. And I've since learned there are a lot of very complicated ways in which magazines and media companies can run. I took a very simple approach, and actually we still keep it simple because it allows us to focus on more complicated things, since we don't try and do some kind of a pay for play or like you can buy it or sponsored content. It's like that's such a difficult negotiation. We put out good content. I mean, the plan was, and it still is, that we put together really compelling content, and we gather an audience, and other people want to access exposure to that audience, and so we sell space around it. And it's pretty straightforward, but it's all grounded in people, right? Because people drive business. So that's the shortest version I have for you.
No, it's a great version. I think it's really good context as far as looking at Asheville in a different way, right? I think you grow up here, and then, I didn't grow up here, but when I got here, I just kept hearing like it was all about, tourist economy in the mountains, right?
You probably have a different perception of where you grew up than people that visit there, right?
Of course, right? I think that's the cool thing about what it is that you do and the way you're bringing things together. It's not like, this is an outside perspective. It's like, no, this is home at every level of your life, right? Like I say this is home for me, but I've been here, 10 years, I don't even remember, 2009, so whatever that is.
Statistically qualifies you as a local compared to
the 10-year mark?
I don't know where the mark is, but I actually have a theory about the local term being so ubiquitous, and I think it's because...
What's the theory?
Yeah, I think it's because so few people that live here as a percentage of population are originally from here, but this is such a wonderful place to be that they use the term local more than they would elsewhere, and it's a way for them to adopt this as their home and to ground themselves in it and to take ownership in it. So,
well, I guess that makes sense.
That's the case, but that's my theory.
No, I think that makes sense, because there's definitely people that you hear have been here like 3, 4, 5 years, and they're like, oh yeah, like I'm from Asheville. It's like, I don't know. I mean, it's subjective, right? But it's definitely a different feel than if you grew up here.
People support things they help create, so that means those people are helping make this place what it is. So that's a positive in my book.
That's fair. Right on that note, get your opinion on like what is Asheville now versus what it was. Is it still the same? Has it always been what it is?
I think that's
there's obviously growth, but you've always been who you are, and you've grown and you've developed over time. Yeah, but you've held some common tenets, right? So has Asheville, as a city and as a place, has it?
Nothing is the same. Everything is in flux at all times. I had this discussion with someone at a panel I was on a month or so ago, and they were talking about gentrification, which is like a serious buzzword and not a positive one. And without getting into it at a granular level, because it's all contextual, but in a broad stroke sense, no matter where you're looking at it. But it's an open market. People are going to be moving and changing, and you're in real estate, so you understand that like nothing is static, right? It's all moving. So to expect it to stay the same and have it forever is a very rare thing actually in the world, and that's something you have to pay a dear price for.
totally get that. But I feel like Asheville, that's one of the reasons Asheville is unique, though, right? Like, the mountains aren't really going anywhere in any sense, right? And that's
but we're all boxed in around them.
True. But, I mean, like, there are some certain things about Asheville that are inherent. I mean, I don't know, I guess as static as could be without there really expecting to be much change around it, right? Like, where we are in the world, the mountains, it's a beautiful spot, right? Like, that's a reason people come here. It's not like, you know, I don't know, let's just use Charlotte as an example. Like,
Charlotte's got a lot. I don't know if you've heard.
No, it does. But, I mean, everything that Charlotte has is, like, quote unquote, like, very fluid, right? It's been created or it's been changed, but like Asheville has some things that are just kind of woven into its fabric. I would argue, at least.
Oh yeah, I mean, like,
and that's kind of what I mean. Is like,
yeah, I can appreciate that. So I'd say the thing that's static about Asheville is that people have been coming here for a quality of life for a century or more. I mean, at the very least, the land of the sky as a term, I believe, was coined by the Southern Railway as a PR move to get people to come to Asheville and stay in the bed and breakfasts that they had either constructed or that others had constructed up here. And so, I mean, we've always been a quality of life place, right? That's what brought the Vanderbilts here. That's why people still come here today and sacrifice in their salary just because they want to actually be here, which I think we'll see is probably going to become the greatest asset because you can work from anywhere now.
Yes, absolutely. I think that, it's really, really exciting now that so many people get to move here and have salaries from other places. That's a great positive change. So going back to the conversation around Asheville, like, there have been some things inherent about Asheville that there's been tweaks to, but they've always kind of been constants, right? And so, like, when you look at Asheville and the change Asheville's gone through within that backdrop, is it really that different?
Oh man, that's just a matter of perspective, right? I mean,
your perspective, though, right? Because I'll give you
a
parallel
parallel example, right? Yeah. In the last year, my wife and I had a child, and we've also had a lot going on with work. And she said something the other day, like, "Can you believe that it is already June?" And I said, "Yeah," and she laughs because I think she's heard me say this before, but it's really just a matter of how you want to look at it, right? If you look at it from your memories perspective of how long ago does January feel like? Well, not very long ago. But if you look at it as the sum of all the things you've achieved from January to now,
it can feel like an eternity.
It can feel like an eternity. So it's really just a matter of how you want to look at it. And I choose to look at life as a long thing, but if you want it to be a blip, it can be a blip. I mean, that's the irony. Like, you see someone at like a retirement party and they'll show like a slideshow for like 5 minutes of their life. It's like, what a depressing thing. Thanks for summing up 60 years in 5 minutes. Really, I must have done a lot there.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I have this thing. So I grew up in Bogota, Colombia, right? And I've always wondered, like, this conversation around Asheville and change, like, if you went back, how many people would actually really enjoy what it was? Because, like, I know the more time I've been removed from, like, high school, the less greater it seemed, if that makes sense.
The less greater?
Yeah. So, like, when I first graduated high school and I moved from Colombia, I loved going back. I was like, so awesome. And I still enjoy going back, but it's very different. It doesn't have, like, the memories. I was like, oh, this is such a great, all these things you do. And it's like, I go back, 5 years, 10 years after high school. And it's like, oh, this is totally different. Like, I don't have, like, the memories or the reasons I went to go back and enjoy are totally different now.
Do you think that's because the nostalgia's faded and it's no longer grounded because so much has changed? Or is that just because you have different interests and that's no longer connected?
Well, I think it's a combination of both, right? I think, like, you grow as a person, and so the way you relate to your surroundings also change. And so the things that were really appealing when I was in high school are not appealing to me any now. And I also think the experiences people are having are different. So I don't know. Like, I wouldn't want to go back. I don't like if that makes sense, right?
No, I mean, I can. So part of that,
and so I'm wondering.
I don't like the feeling of nostalgia.
I wonder, like, how many people, like, if you really got the opportunity to go back 10 years and, like, how Asheville was in its glory days, like, would you really be better off then than you are now and, like, everything? I think overall, like, there's been a lot of positive change, and I mean, I'm biased obviously because I've been here since 2009. I've loved the upswing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a we sit in a position of privilege, and that there are so many people that want this place to be the home that they want, that we're all fighting over what the future of it is going to look like. And I would say in any relationship, which is sort of something that's more, we think of it as person to person, but what you're describing, right, is a relationship with a place and a time and all that. Ambivalence is the kiss of death, right? Love me, hate me, don't just not care.
Yeah.
That's the end of it all.
Right, fair enough. So you've been doing the magazine since 2011, and you've been focused on the fabric of the community, right? The small entrepreneurs, the people who have businesses that are, like you said, the forgotten businesses from when people think of like what Asheville is. Is that a fair statement?
Somewhat. What we're really trying to do, that is a correct statement, because it is inherently connected to what we're really here to do. But our mission from the beginning, and I'm proud to say that it still stays as grounded, because everything is an iterative thing. Everything you do is iterative, right? You learn from each experience, you grow and build on it. But our mission was to profile those who take the risk, and support them, and showcase why they do what they do, right? Why do they get out of bed and take that risk? So that we can encourage other people to go and do likewise. A good example of a business that I think, actually maybe that's not a great example. There's examples everywhere, but you could look at a business owner who's been doing something for 2 decades and think of yourself, at least I know that this was something I heard other people say, like, leaving college and trying to go out on their own. It's like, well, I can't do that now. The world's a different place. They could do that then, but you have to be, everything's faster and better, and you can't afford the mistakes. And that, we want to defy that perspective. And I think that it's constantly being turned on its head. Every time we profile someone, we're showing how everybody starts what they do from a position of ignorance. And as time goes on and they do it more and more, ignorance wanes and intelligence ebbs and experience grows, and you clean it up as you go. It's never going to be perfect. It becomes more perfect as you build a better model and you can stay in business, but people need to understand that, right? I mean, if you come out of business school and you think that it is as clean as it is in the textbooks, or as your teachers might lead you to believe, you would quit on day 2. You'd never make it there, right? I mean, you could build, a business plan is it's worth about as much as the paper it's written on. And that's probably not entirely fair to say, but I would say it's going to change. The thing you set out to create 6 months later is not the thing you are now doing, most of the time.
I would agree wholeheartedly on that, on my experience. It's very individual, of course, but you have the opportunity to say that from a position of talking to people for so long about this exact topic, right?
Well, it's fun to be an entrepreneur and ask entrepreneurs about entrepreneurship. It's like we're cataloging it, but we're also engaged and participating in it.
You get to get any of your curiosity taken care of in that moment, right?
Well, that's the real, to get back to your original question, that was the real thought, is that I wanted to keep learning about business, but I didn't want to do it in the classroom anymore. So effectively, I spent 8 or 9 years getting the best MBA that I could ever hope for by curating my own textbooks and asking entrepreneurs how they do what they do, and choosing my own teachers every day, like walking in somewhere and saying, why'd you get out of bed today?
What have you found? Have you found there to be a specific question that you really like to ask more so than others because of how people answer it?
I think any open-ended question is a good question to ask. It's easy to, well, no, it's not easy. None of. What you're doing right now, right? You do it well, and it's not something that's written on a piece of paper or scripted. And if you ask certain questions, you'll get certain answers. We did a series for a while, and we'll probably bring it back because we've been talking about it lately, where we ask people, everybody we profile for that month or maybe for that quarter, one question. And it's really enlightening, the different answers you get from different people.
What was the last question?
Well, I don't know if it's the last one, but this is
the
like
one you remember?
This is the one I remember the most. And we asked, let's see, maybe I shouldn't use names, actually. That's better off. People can go dig if they want to find it.
Go to capitalatplay.com.
Our search bar is really robust. You could probably go look up the wedge because Tim Schaller, I can call out on this because this was a really great answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
We asked a number of other people the same question: do you pursue continuing education?
Oh, that is a great question.
I mean, what does it mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't even know.
Define continuing education to begin with, right?
I'm learning right now,
Yeah.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
One individual answered the question by saying, yes, I go to, different continuing ed classes every year. I go to these seminars. Yeah. Tim's answer was totally other end of the spectrum. He said, everything I learned that's of real value. I mean, this is probably incorrect, so if people are going to go look.
Very much a paraphrase.
Yeah, but he said, everything I ever learned was from some old guy at a bar. Now I'm the old guy at the bar. It's like, that's great, right? Like that, it's more insightful as to his perspective. Because let's face it, are you going to write down where they go do their continuing education? No. But you can learn that that's okay. That's all right to have that perspective. And these are people.
That makes so much sense. So when I got into real estate, I went to a Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if you're familiar with the book. And
I'm not, but you've told me that it was important for you. I recall this.
So the great book. And like probably I would say more often than not, if somebody's in real estate, they've read this book and they point to it as like the thing that started the whole mental process of like going down this path. I guess if you started after it got published, I don't know, so say mid-2000s and on. And I went to their conference. It was like, learn how to flip houses, no money, no credit, blah, blah, blah. I was like, great, I have none of these things. I'm going to do this.
This
like,
is for me.
Yeah, like I start at the bottom. Cool. I went, drank the Kool-Aid, landed on the slippery slope. I didn't really know what I was doing. And then I got back and I was like, told so many people, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this thing, flip houses. And then I just learned mostly from finding people I could ask questions from and like finding the old people at the bar. I'd say probably most people would agree with that is you find somebody who's done it, ask them the questions, and then try to do your best to apply their answers to your specific situation.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with the self-help book model is that people are giving you the top 10 tips, and you can't apply those top 10 tips because you're not that person. There's way more variables that impact how those points affected their reality than just those 10 things, or even what you're going to understand about them from that book.
Right.
So you really have to get to know someone at a more intimate level. You have to see all the variables or as many as you can handle and try and cherry pick things like that person seems like they're in my situation. Maybe this one thing seems like it's got enough efficacy that I could apply it to my own life, right? But if you tried to take those 10 things and apply them to your life, it's like that would be a wreck.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's the way it would be for me, at least.
I understand. And I tried to do it the book model and it didn't go so well. And then I finally got the people model and that started helping a little bit more.
So what was something you learned from the old guy at the bar or gal at the bar?
I'd say the biggest thing that I learned was just that you can't write it down on paper and then go out and expect A through Z to happen. Like kind of going back to the business plan thing, right? You can put everything out, you can plan it, you can read it, you can prepare, but in the middle of it, like you can't lean on that. You have to like lean on experience and exposure. And you only get that by going out and falling and busting your face and like having that experience and that exposure that you can lean on. And it's painful to gain it sometimes.
Yeah.
That was my experience. It was like painful and it sucked. Like first few years were not like glory years that are. And then it was like, then you have something to stand back and you have context for everything else. And that was huge.
Yeah, I would say I've learned more from people who fail, far more than people who succeed. And, obviously if you fail and you go in some dark corner and, cry, then you're not really probably someone that we're going to learn from. But if you get back up and you try it again, you now know exactly what didn't work.
Yeah.
And actually every time you make a mistake that causes that problem, okay, that door doesn't lead anywhere I want to go. Don't open that door.
Don't open that one again.
Yeah. There's another fella, Steve Whitmire of Brasstown Beef, who every time I see him tells me about, and he tells me, I'll get a lot more positive information, so I'm probably pigeonholing him to say this, but I think it's really funny because he'll say, guess how much my tuition is at? And it'll be something he'll tell me about some lesson he learned, right? And it's like that was the dollar amount that it cost him, and he calls it tuition because you got to learn that lesson somehow.
For sure.
I love that perspective because if it works out the first time and it's all exactly what you planned, you're probably quite lucky. You might be brilliant, but you probably don't know nearly as much as the guy who's failed 10 times and got back up there and finally made it.
Yeah, I would say that.
To be fair, when I say guy, I mean, the
person,
gender-neutral guy.
individual.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about having a little bit of struggle up front because, like, I've seen and I've heard stories. I haven't seen a person, but I've heard stories from people here in town, talking real estate, and they're like, yeah, just, if you have too much success early on and it's too easy, then it kind of sets you up for failure because then you expect something quick, easy, whereas, a lot of good things, it's like a little bit of that low, long, frustrating process to get to where you want to build.
Yeah. Well, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it, right?
Yep, that is true. That is true. I cannot agree with that more. So on that note, though, right, you've seen that. You've had that conversation with so many people. Do you think going back, looking at all these people who have been entrepreneurs, business owners here in the Asheville area, could you think about a common theme that's gone through most of them? Or
yeah, most
all
of them. I mean, because we're profiling entrepreneurs, you don't step out on that ledge unless you have a little comfortability with risk. And I think people equate risk more to gambling, but there are no guarantees in life or, in anything that I can think of. And you have to be comfortable with a certain amount of risk. Otherwise, you're really probably not well suited to get out there and do what you're doing. And there might be some people that think, I don't take risks. And that's probably also a fair perspective, right? Because you're taking a calculated risk. Maybe you've calculated so much that you feel there is no risk, but it could be crazy to somebody else to think that, you would go do what you're doing. I mean, yeah, I would say risk is the common theme because if you're not risking anything, it's really hard to gain anything.
Do you have a specific moment that you're like, wow, I just had like a huge light bulb that personally affected your business when you were interviewing somebody back in the early days or profiling somebody?
Well, I haven't actually written any of our stories, so I'll say that up front. I have interviewed them all because I did pre-interviews with everybody to make sure it was going to be something we wanted to cover. So just as that disclaimer, I don't want people thinking that I wrote all these because we've got a tremendous amount of talent that write these pieces, but probably a lot of little ones along the way. I can't think of anything that really stands out tremendously.
It's the sum of
one thing that I guess I was being interviewed and listening to other people interview that made me realize we're not a magazine. We're a media company, and we just happen to have a monopoly not on a beautiful magazine, but on content around business. I was actually on a panel for the WNC Press Pass and was being interviewed next to Citizen Times and WLOS and Asheville Radio Group, and they're all talking about how it's all different platforms and it's all cross-channel. And I came away from that thinking like, right, we are too. None of us, we're actually lucky to be in a place where we all kind of have our own niche, but we're not a magazine per se in any kind of a format that people assume now. That's just the word we've used to describe ourselves to this point. But that was a bit of an epiphany because it changed the way I looked at what we did, and it turns out historically we've been doing this stuff for a long time. I think the first thing we did 5 years ago in this vein was the Center for Craft Creativity and Design asked us if we would be willing to design their 20-year anniversary portfolio. God, I hope it was 20 years. I think if it was not. Anyways, forgive me, Stephanie, if it wasn't. Anyways, why would the Center for Craft Creativity and Design call us to do that, right? And it's because we do good design. And so, that kind of thing we've done over the years, and it was a funny thing to realize, like, right, you actually do this. That's what you're in the business of doing, but you just hadn't looked at it that way. So those kind of things are fun when it happens because it's a blinding flash of the obvious,
So I'm going to be a little selfish here and ask a very specific question.
Go for it.
So from a fledgling media company over here on, what Nolan and I are working on, from somebody who's established it, some words of wisdom that you'd be willing to impart.
Good content is
Be
king.
the old guy at the bar for a moment.
Content is king. I mean, quality's it. It's a visceral human need. It's just like good food. Entertainment is just as important. And food trucks are a great example. You would think food trucks are really popular. Is that because it tastes better out of the truck? Is it because there's something fun about it?
Yeah.
Is it because it comes to me?
Right.
Maybe, but I think mostly it's because it's a way for good chefs to get into business that they couldn't otherwise, because it lowers the barrier to entry.
Right.
Which is to say, you find a lot more people serving good food that probably weren't afforded a platform to do so. And people will climb to the top of a telephone pole to get that good food, right? If you put something really entertaining on the ceiling in here, you'd have a line out the door so that people could look at it. So quality is it. That's my thinking.
Heard. Curious to know if you think back, when you're growing up in Asheville, something that you'd say, hey, like I really love this about Asheville that's no longer in place today. And then something that might be in place today that you love about Asheville that wasn't in place or in existence growing up.
So the first part may still exist. I don't know, but it's something I think about because I have a family and a child now. And I grew up in basically a Mayberry-esque life where I didn't wear shoes in the summer and I didn't own a key to the house at all. We didn't have a key. I mean, I guess there was a key. I just didn't have one and no one used it and the door was always open. So I don't know if that's going away, but I mean, as more people show up and, the things that come with larger groups of people, well, I don't know if it comes through, but there was a siren that just went in the background. Asheville's a very safe place, but regardless.
Perfect timing on that,
prophetic. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know that I'd be comfortable doing that now. Maybe that's just an effect of us being more connected and being more aware of what's going on out there. So I can't say that that's driven from a statistical perspective, but I do feel like maybe that's changed a little bit, but the opportunity cost of that is obviously pretty great. Just use the key, lock the door, and we've got all these other great benefits that come with having a thriving population and economy. Something that's here that wasn't here then, and I probably don't know if I could speak specifically to it, but I do know from talking to younger people, and that makes me sound so old to say, but there's things for high school age kids to do around here, and there's just a lot of activities and things going on that there weren't when I was a kid. I didn't anticipate being back in Asheville right away, and the only reason I was because I came here to start this publication, came back from Boone. I probably would have moved elsewhere, and eventually now would be looking to come back like a lot of people I know. But I think it's a more well-rounded place to be for young and old, and let's just say idle time is not my friend. So in high school, that may have led to youthful indiscretions. But I think it's important to have that around here, especially because we've got a good quality of life and a pretty good family culture. I think.
I think the family culture's. I don't know. We have a 3-year-old and stoked about it, and it's easy to go do things. There's like a million things to do and a million places to go, and it's just easy to get out and connect with other people that are family, that have families and everything like that. So, totally support that. So, I was, wondering here, right? So, very curious about, obviously, all the people you've talked to.
Okay.
And all of the things that you've seen. Do you feel that we're going the trajectory that Asheville's on as far as growth is good and has been good and will continue to be good, or is there a point of diminishing returns where we might have too much growth, where it will hurt us? I'm not saying that we're there, that it's any time, but is that something that you've seen, or do you think overall, growth here is always going to be a pretty positive thing?
I think if it's managed well, and I think if it's also not managed well, it's going to be positive. There's definitely a diminishing returns element, and it's not linear or even consistent, right? Even if it's not linear, it's not like it's exponentially decreasing or increasing. It's all over the map, right? Because there's so many things that affect it. So to grow, you need infrastructure, you need regulation, you need lack of regulation, you need so many things to happen, and those things are all happening in different pockets with different groups of people, governing them and interacting with them and affecting them, and then there's reactions to those things that happen. So it's more like Game of Thrones. I hate to bring
not
that
familiar.
up.
I don't know.
That's right. You're a strong man. I'm just saying, it's like it's chaos, and it's a lot of different things happening, and so many dynamics interacting with each other that there's a lot of things that affect it. So, yes, I'm just going to take the glasses half full and say that growth is positive, and we're in a pretty awesome spot. I think a lot of people want to live here. We've got a lot of business organizations that are all working together and competing and trying to be a home for entrepreneurship and for businesses and growth. I think we're a pretty business friendly place.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that as if I'm a real estate individual, so maybe that's a different conversation to be had with developers. We tried to do a piece on development, and developers said we won't talk to you, because we don't want to be blacklisted. We're already having a hard enough time. So that's just an honest data point. But
I've heard the same thing from not everybody, but a lot of people who are in development. It's like it's hard to have positive press around it.
Yeah, but that's okay. We are still growing, and there's a lot of stuff happening. So, I mean, I guess I heard an interesting one, and I don't have any bearing on whether this is true or not. But again, getting to the perspective and the amorphous
Throw some gasoline on some rumors. That's good.
Yeah. Well, someone was asking, do we have too many hotels? And then someone else said, well, what do you think hotels turn into when they go bad? They turn into affordable housing. I'm like, I have no idea whether that's true or not, but I was like, well, I mean, I tend to think things are very self-corrective in a lot of ways. So I don't tend to worry about that stuff.
It's like whatever happens is going to happen, and we'll adjust as it comes.
Yeah. So I think a good version of this is individuals can make very smart decisions, right? But experts actually don't make as good of decisions as a group of non-experts that have done research on it or something of that nature.
Interesting.
So it's either the CIA or the State Department has a research pool that is like always trying to look and make predictions on different global events, and they've found that if they can take someone who's relatively intelligent and a good researcher and apply them to finding out what they think will happen here, and have like 10 of them do it and take an aggregate of their opinions, they're going to be much better off than if they took someone who has been working on this for 20 years and take their prediction. Because the non-expert knows they don't know, so they're willing to accept new ideas and look at things from a new perspective and not take their preconceived notions into it, right?
Well, that makes sense, yeah.
So I don't know. It's I don't sweat the small stuff or worry about a lot of, people can get very upset about these kinds of things, and it all tends to work out, I think.
I think that most people who have started their own business would probably agree with that, because probably a common trait is the optimism, and included with the risk-taking. Yeah. Would you?
Yeah, you gotta stay upbeat. I mean, that's definitely, and I think that's at the heart of what we tried to do with the magazine. Is it's part inspiration for people that want to go do it, but it's also a little bit of a self-help group for people that are. It's letting you know, like, hey, it's okay. Like, you're not the only one who did that crazy, messy thing and then got back up there and did it again, and it was a little bit better. And, I think that's important. It's nice to know that no one else is, it's not like everybody else is perfect and you're the one that's just, like, rolling in the dirt. You know what I mean?
For sure. What are you the most excited about right now that you guys are working with at the magazine, publishing, personally, whatever? What are you, when somebody's like, what are you excited about? How do you answer that right now? It could be totally non-work related as well.
There's a lot of things, man. It's really tough. It's really tough to count. I mean, we have, Caleb Wellborn's our new chief operating officer, and I'm excited about new perspective because I've been doing this for 9 years, and I don't see things with a fresh eye anymore.
Right.
I know enough to know that we need someone to help hone processes that I've become complacent with, and that's exciting. We've got every channel we have is continuing to grow. I mean, the magazine is well recognized, well received. We have a weekly business newsletter that's going out to 10,000 plus people, and it's growing. Thank you. Yeah. We have a new product we launched last year called the Annual. Actually, we launched both of those channels last year. So, like in the latter 6 months of the year, which is a ton of fun, and love to see it, responded to, and mostly positively. But I love criticism too, because it helps us grow. It's like if no one tells you you've got dirt on your face, you can't really wipe it off. But So those are all really positive. I got a daughter that just turned 6 months old yesterday, and she's starting to interact and engage, and that's so much fun. I work with a private investment bank out of Brevard and Raleigh called Carolina Financial Group, or CareFin, and we've been building a website for them, and that's getting a tremendous amount of traction. God, what else? I mean, every day above ground.
It's a good day.
It's all good, man.
I hear you on that. Yeah, well, man, I really appreciate you stopping by and talking today and whatnot. Just wanted to give you, another chance. Just of all the people that you've talked to, anything that we might not have covered that'd be worth reminding people that are out there, hey, these businesses exist. I think we do overall a good job supporting local businesses here, but sometimes there's a lot of secondary behind the scene businesses that,
there's
you don't know that there's
more than
so much
imagine.
going on, right? Yeah,
it's insane. I thought I knew the area well and thought I had a good handle, and I was I got my list of people that I'm going to bring out here and that no one would have ever thought were in the area. Big names, small names, interesting things. I don't think I could really sum it up on one person. There is one that I tend to gravitate towards as the more unique, just as a teaser to tell people go dig through our archives. We've profiled just about any business that you've heard of in the area, and if we haven't, then they're probably on our list. But there's a business we did a piece on 3 or 4 years ago, and this gentleman manages a company making diapers and harnesses for chickens and leashes for cats.
Huh.
And, it's just such a wonderful example of someone saying, yeah, honey, this is what we're going to go do. And taking that leap and that risk and saying that's it. And I think when we did the story, he said they were going to do over $500,000 that next year. And, it's probably a testament to accessing a global market and probably the popularity of having chickens or cats. But I have this theory that business owners are sort of not business owners, I guess, entrepreneurs would probably be categorized similarly to addicts by a clinical psychologist, because we engage in all of these bizarre activities, sort of, detrimental activities, right? We'll do things that are harmful to ourselves and those around us physically, mentally, monetarily. We even have hallucinations emotionally. And the hallucination part is real. It's you see something that someone else doesn't. It's opportunity. It may not be something physical. If you're seeing something like a pink elephant on your desk, you are having a hallucination. That's different. But just seeing the opportunity around growing a business that makes chicken diapers and harnesses is not something. Look at it on the converse perspective, right? If I would stake the claim that capitalism is by far the most democratic, equal, and opportunistic political and economic ideal there is. And it has a bad name because we allow maybe 4% of the private sector to drag it through the mud. But the rest of us, the other 96% that are the driving force of our nation's economy, are using it in the way that it's supposed to be used. And they need to have that word to describe themselves. And if you were going to have a government bureaucrat decide what businesses there are going to be and which ones there are not going to be, there would sure as hell not be anybody making chicken harnesses and diapers, right? So that's the real thing that's so
beautiful,
fun to see, right? So
no, absolutely.
People come up with an idea no one else has seen. They create value out of it. It's not about getting a slice of the pie. They make their own pie. Mm-hmm. Hell, don't even make a pie. Make a cake.
Yeah.
Do something different, but they create value for themselves nonetheless.
Absolutely. That's it's pretty special stuff. And I agree. It's what I do now here in Asheville, it would be 10 times harder to do what I would do growing up in Columbia, as much as I love that place and, still flows in my blood a lot. But it's very special and unique to live in an ecosystem that allows you to have a crazy idea, chase it, and if it's a good idea, to survive off of it. That is...
Yeah, if it's a bad idea, fine. You don't. But
but if it's good and you can cash in on it and that you can, wow. That is incredible stuff.
It's
and it's exciting. It really is. It's the type of thing that keeps you awake at night for all the right reasons.
Yeah. Well, look, I wish you the best of luck in all those endeavors, and I hope that you don't stumble often, but I'm sure when you do, you're going to learn every bit out of it.
It's always part of the journey for sure, man.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Any closing words? Any statements you want to make on record about real estate or otherwise?
Tell me one thing you learned from someone you've interviewed.
Great question.
I mean, not just anything. Give me something good.
Like something of substance?
Yeah. Or better.
Something specific. Catching me off guard a little bit here.
You didn't think I was going to ask no questions.
I was thinking you were going to ask no questions. You got two in, so I don't know. I would say that I can't think of anything specific right now that I could say like it's this is the idea. But I think the overarching thing that I've walked away from like this experience of doing Asheville real estate news and sitting down and talking to people is that like when somebody has a desire to do something and they apply it, they can make it happen. It's probably something similar you've seen. And this just component of like, man, it's so crazy out there and you never really know what's going on. And the people that I've enjoyed talking to the most are like, yeah, we just made it happen. Like we just found our way. We kept pushing. We kept doing it. And so I think, circling back on that full circle and more clarity, I would say that the thing I've appreciated or I've learned the most and heard from most is just like the concept of just optimism and excitement to be able to do something that they love.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. That reminds me of our ping pong conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Aren't you a ping pong player?
I love playing ping pong.
Right.
Probably not very good, but I love it.
That's all right. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you keep the ball in play, you're going to get better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Exactly.
essentially what we're talking about is you get back up and you keep trying. So
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful sentiment.
Yeah, I think it is good. So cool, man. Well, anything else?
Hey, you going to give me a game in ping pong?
Yeah, we can totally play a game of ping pong for sure.
I mean, not right now, but let's go play one sometime soon. That'd be fun.
Absolutely.
All right.
We'll set it up then. Cool.
Thanks, Rodrigo.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, man. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode. We'll see you all next week and see you guys soon at the meetups. Please, would love to see you guys in person. And don't forget to review, subscribe, and rate the podcast. Take care, everybody.